or English story. I've always thought of life as a jar. You know, one of those big glass ones you see in old-fashioned kitchens, filled with cookies or flour, or maybe even seashells if you're the sentimental type. The jar is your life, and everything you do, everything you feel, everything you are, it all goes inside. But here's the thing, the jar doesn't get bigger. It's finite, and what you choose to fill it with, that's up to you. For a long time, I didn't understand that. I thought the jar was just there, passive, waiting to be filled with whatever came my way. I didn't realize I was the one holding the spoon, scooping things into it. And worse, I didn't realize that some of the things I was putting in were toxic, poisonous, even slowly eating away at the good stuff. Let me take you back to where it all started. Or at least, where I think it started. It's hard to pinpoint the exact moment. But if I had to guess, it was somewhere in my early 20s. I was fresh out of college, armed with a degree I wasn't sure I even wanted, and a head full of dreams that felt more like obligations. You know the kind. Get a good job, climb a ladder, make money, buy a house, get married, have kids. The whole checklist. It was like someone had handed me a script, and I was just following the lines, hoping it would lead me to some kind of happiness. But here's the thing about scripts, they're written by someone else. And if you're not careful, you'll spend your whole life acting out a story that isn't yours. I landed a job at a marketing firm. It wasn't my dream job, but it paid the bills and it looked good on paper. I told myself I was lucky to have it. Everyone else seemed to think so too. My parents were proud. My friends were impressed. And for a while, that was enough. I filled my jar with their approval, their validation. It felt good, like I was doing something right. But then something shifted. I started to notice the cracks, the long hours, the endless meetings, the constant pressure to perform. It was like I was running on a treadmill, going faster and faster, but never actually getting anywhere. And the worst part? I didn't even know where I wanted to go. I was just running because everyone else was. That's when the toxic motivation started to creep in. You know the kind I'm talking about, the kind that whispers in your ear, telling you you're not good enough, not smart enough, not successful enough. The kind that makes you push yourself harder. Not because you want to, but because you're afraid of what will happen if you don't. I started filling my jar with things like fear, insecurity, and self-doubt. I told myself it was necessary, that it was the price of success. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. A gnawing emptiness that no amount of achievement could fill. One day, I hit a breaking point. It was a small thing. Really. I was in a meeting, presenting a campaign I'd been working on for weeks. I thought it was good, really good, But my boss didn't. He picked it apart, piece by piece, until there was nothing left. And then he said something that stuck with me. Is this the best you can do? It wasn't the words themselves that got to me. It was the way he said them, like he already knew the answer, like he knew I was a fraud, just waiting to be exposed. I went home that night and stared at my jar. It was full, but not in a good way. It was heavy, weighed down by all the things I've been shoving into it: fear, insecurity, self doubt, exhaustion. And for the first time, I realized I didn't like what I saw. I didn't like who I was becoming. That's when I decided to make a change. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but I knew I couldn't keep living like this. So I started small. I took a step back from work, carving out time for the things I used to love: reading, painting, hiking. I reconnected with old friends, the ones who made me laugh and reminded me of who I was before I got lost in the rat race. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I quit my job. It wasn't easy. In fact, it was terrifying, but it was also liberating. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in control of my own life. I started filling my jar with different things, things that actually mattered to me. I took a part-time job at a nonprofit, working with kids in underserved communities. It didn't pay much, but it gave me something my old job never could: a sense of purpose. I started volunteering at an animal shelter, spending my weekends playing with dogs and cleaning cages. It wasn't glamorous, but it made me happy. And then there was the writing. I'd always loved to write, but I'd never taken it seriously. It was just a hobby, something I did in my spare time. But now, with more time on my hands, I started to pour myself into it. I wrote about my experiences, my struggles, my hopes and dreams. And slowly, I began to find my voice. It wasn't all smooth sailing. Of course, there were days when I doubted myself, when I wondered if I'd made a huge mistake. But even on those days, I could look at my jar and see the difference. It was lighter, brighter, filled with things that brought me joy instead of dragging me down. And then something amazing happened. People started to notice. They'd read my writing and tell me how much it resonated with them, how it made them feel less alone. And that's when I realized something. True inspiration isn't about pushing yourself to be better than everyone else. It's about being true to yourself, and in doing so, inspiring others to do the same. Now, when I look at my jar, I see a life that's full, not because it's perfect, but because it's mine. It's filled with love, laughter, and the occasional mess. And that's okay, because life isn't about keeping your jar pristine. It's about filling it with the things that matter most to you. So here's my advice. For what it's worth, take a good, hard look at your jar. What's in it? Are you filling it with things that bring you joy? Or are you letting fear and insecurity take over? Remember, you're the one holding the spoon. You get to decide what goes in. And if you don't like what you see, that's okay. It's never too late to start over. Empty it out if you have to. It might be scary, but it's worth it because at the end of the day, your jar is your life, and you deserve to fill it with things that make you happy. So that's my story. It's not perfect, but it's mine, and I'm proud of it because I've learned that life isn't about following someone else's script. It's about writing your own. And if you do it right, your jar will be filled with more love, laughter, and joy than you ever thought possible. The moral of the story: if there's one thing I've learned from my journey, it's this: your life is your own, and how you fill it is entirely up to you. It's easy to fall into the trap of living for others, seeking their approval, chasing their dreams, or measuring your worth by their standards. But the truth is, no one else can tell you what belongs in your jar. Only you can decide what truly matters. Toxic motivation, the kind that drives you out of fear, insecurity, or the need to prove yourself, might get you results in the short term, but it comes at a cost. It fills your jar with things that weigh you down, leaving little room for joy, peace, or authenticity. True inspiration, on the other hand, comes from within. It's about aligning your actions with your values, pursuing what lights you up, and letting go of what doesn't serve you. The jar of your life is finite. You can't keep adding to it forever. So choose wisely. Fill it with love, kindness, and the things that make your soul sing. And don't be afraid to empty it out if it's filled with things that no longer serve you. It's never too late to start over. Part 2: the ripple effect. After I quit my job and started filling my jar with things that truly mattered, something unexpected happened. My choices began to ripple outward, affecting not just me, but the people around me. It started small. A friend who told me she felt inspired to pursue her passion for photography after reading one of my blog posts. Then it grew. A coworker from my old job reached out to say she quit her job too and was now teaching yoga full-time. You made me realize life's too short to spend it doing something that doesn't make you happy, she said. I hadn't set out to inspire anyone. I was just trying to save myself. But in doing so, I'd given others permission to do the same. It was a humbling realization. We don't always see the impact we have on the people around us, but it's there. Every choice we make, every step we take toward living authentically, sends a message. It's okay to be yourself. It's okay to want more. It's okay to choose happiness. One day, I got an email from a woman named Sarah. She'd been following my blog for months and wanted to share her story. She'd been stuck in a toxic job for years, feeling trapped and unfulfilled. But after reading about my journey she decided to make a change. She'd started taking night classes in graphic design, something she'd always been passionate about, but never thought she could do professionally. "I'm not where I want to be yet," she wrote, "but for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm moving in the right direction." Her email brought tears to my eyes. It was a reminder that our choices don't just affect us. They have the power to inspire, to heal, to transform. And that's the beauty of living authentically. When you fill your jar with things that truly matter, you create space for others to do the same. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. As I continued on this new path, I faced challenges I hadn't anticipated. There were days when the fear crept back in, whispering doubts in my ear. What if you fail? What if you're not good enough? What if you end up with nothing? On those days, it was tempting to fall back into old patterns, to fill my jar with things that didn't belong, just to quiet the noise. But I'd learned my lesson. I knew that toxic motivation might offer temporary relief, but it would never bring me true fulfillment. So instead of giving in, I turned to the things that grounded me: my writing, my friends, the quiet moments spent in nature. I reminded myself why I'd made these changes in the first place, and I kept going. One of the biggest lessons I've learned is that true inspiration isn't a one-time thing. It's not something you find and then hold on to forever. It's a daily practice, a conscious choice to fill your jar with things that align with your values and bring you joy. Some days, it's easy. Other days, it's hard, but it's always worth it. Now, when I look at my jar, I see a life that's full in the best possible way. It's not perfect. There are still cracks and imperfections, and there probably always will be. But that's okay, because life isn't about perfection. It's about authenticity. It's about showing up as your true self, even when it's hard, and filling your jar with the things that make your heart sing. And here's the thing: you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to know exactly what belongs in your jar or how to get it there. All you have to do is start. Take one small step toward the life you want, and trust that the rest will follow. So, if you're feeling stuck or unsure, here's my advice. Start with one thing that brings you joy, one thing that makes you feel alive, one thing that reminds you of who you are. Put that in your jar and let it be your guide. Because once you start filling your life with things that truly matter, you'll find that the rest falls into place. And remember, you're not alone. We're all just trying to figure it out, one day at a time. So be kind to yourself and be kind to others. You never know whose jar you might be helping to fill. The end, or maybe just the beginning. This isn't the end of my story. It's just one chapter in a much bigger journey. And the same is true for you. No matter where you are right now, no matter what's in your jar, there's always room for more joy, more love, more meaning. So keep going. Keep filling your jar with the things that matter. And don't be afraid to share your journey with others. Because the world needs your light, your voice, your story. After all, the jar of your life is yours to fill. Make it a masterpiece. I'm so glad you spent this time with me. If you like the story, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Take care, and see you next time.